What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel, a channel 100% dedicated to the Arsenal, who, as we all know, are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. And yesterday's visit of Manchester United really did feel like a must-win game. Not only have Manchester City gotten off to a flying start with 4 wins from 4 and looked in danger of leaving us behind, even at this early stage of the season, but Manchester United, you always have to beat them. And at the moment, their team's in disarray and they look eminently beatable. But also because our fan base have not been happy with the start at all. We held on to win against Forest at home in the opening game of the season. We held on to beat Crystal Palace away down to 10 men. And, well, last week we had that really disappointing 2-2 draw against Fulham after giving away a goal in the first minute and then falling asleep for a corner to concede the 2 points late in the game. So yesterday really did feel like anything but a win would have sent further agitation through our already irritated fan base. Well, let's say that, but that's certainly true of a large section of fans. And one of the main reasons for that is that it was felt that Mikel Arteta was tinkering a great deal just to continue to play Kai Havertz in midfield. The supposition was that the reason that Thomas Partey had been starting on the right, that Gabriel had been dropped, was so that he could play Kai Havertz. Well, we kind of got an answer to that with yesterday's lineup. We found out on Saturday night that Thomas Partey was injured, thanks to the Ghana Football Association telling the world that he wasn't available for selection because of injury. I'm sure it was not something Arteta wanted revealed at that time. But it did mean that the question over whether he'd be starting at right back, which nobody seemed in favour of, was at least answered. We will never know if Arteta would have gone with Thomas Partey at right back, and I kind of think he wouldn't have done. But in any case, his injury meant that, well, Gabriel came back into the team, Ben White went back into his right back slot, and Kai Havertz did start. At least that puts to bed the question of, does he have to tinker in order to include Kai Havertz? Now, I've felt that Kai Havertz has been getting a lot of abuse unfairly. He hasn't played as badly as everyone's saying. But one of the major talking points from the game yesterday, and we do have to discuss it, was the performance of Kai Havertz. Playing in that number 8 role as a replacement for Granit Xhaka, and even though he had a really good Community Shield as a false 9, he hasn't impressed the fan base playing in Xhaka's old position. Now, I watched that game kind of hoping that he would do something special or lift the fans just so they could get behind him, because I find it really unusual that a player in just 5 games for the club, 5 real games, has already started to upset and annoy people so much. Part of that, I think, is because they genuinely feel like we're tinkering at the back just to play him. But I really hoped that he would put the record straight yesterday and put in a great performance. I felt really confident going into the game. But one of the key talking points we are going to discuss, therefore, is Kai Havertz's involvement in the game and what that means or should mean going forward. But then there's also the question of Ten Hag's press conference, where he said he was really happy with the way Manchester United had played, but felt that decisions had gone against them. So were Manchester United robbed by Arsenal? Let's go through it and discuss, first of all, that lineup. So Zinchenko, not sure you'd say he was fully fit, but certainly fit enough to start, and he came in. Ben White went back into his right back position. We saw Gabriel come in. Declan Rice took that defensive midfield position, and as I said, Kai Havertz started in the number 8 position. The other talking point from the game, of course, was Gabriel Jesus. Would he bring him in instead of Eddie Nketiah? Now, it felt like Eddie Nketiah would stay in because he's been working really hard in training. He came on and made a real difference in the game against Fulham. He scored on the opening day against Nottingham Forest. He looked pretty decent in the game against Monaco pre-season in the Emirates Cup. So I wasn't particularly surprised to see him start. But to be honest with you, whoever we played up front, I honestly thought we would have too much about us for a Manchester United team missing Luke Shaw and Varane and having to rely on Lindelof and Dalot. This game against Manchester United is always a little bit special. So many occasions, so much history, brawls in the tunnel, Ljungberg scoring on his debut. I mean, I could go on. Last season, Eddie Nketiah's late winner was one of the high points of the season. And, well, this game doesn't disappoint, and yesterday was no different. But what was different was the kind of Manchester United that turned up. I honestly don't think I've ever seen a Man United team that was set up to play counter-attacking football the way that Ten Hag set them up yesterday. Mikel Arteta, knowing that he was likely to come up against a team that was happy to sit back and wait for us to make a mistake and pounce, had decided to pull back some of the high pressing. So we were content to let Manchester United play with the ball in their own half, and that's exactly what they did. For the first 20 minutes of the game, there was only one chance of note, and wouldn't you know it, it falls to Kai Havertz. And I don't think anyone, however much you love him or hate him, can deny the fact that he made an absolute ricket of the opportunity. The ball falls to him from an error from a Man United defender, and it's an air shot. He misses it completely. And before the ball can get to Eddie Nketiah, who's running into position, Lisandro Martinez manages to clear it behind for a corner. If that wasn't bad enough, after absorbing 25 minutes of pressure, Rice, unusually pressing high up the pitch, managed to win a turnover which fell to Kai Havertz. His sloppy pass was picked up by Christian Eriksen, who's able to play through Marcus Rashford, and Marcus Rashford did what he usually does. Now, it's hard for me to remember any Arsenal player getting a kind of abuse that Kai Havertz got. But when he gave away that ball, gave it away in the top third of the pitch, there was still an entire 2/3 of the pitch to run through, but he got all of the blame. And, well, I'm going to play you some clips of watch-alongs, and I want to apologise up front for the obscene language. I'm not averse to swearing myself, and when it comes to football, all bets are off. But just to warn you, if you really are put off by very colourful language, you may want to skip past all these or put the volume on mute.
Manchester United into the lead, all because of Kai Havertz, the fucking lazy, useless little fucking Kai Havertz. But where the fuck we bought him is a fucking mystery that will never be solved.
Here's Marcus Rashford into the penalty area. Rashford cuts inside. Rashford scores. Arsenal are behind. And that is your fault, Arteta, because of that bum Kai Havertz. Sack him. You're a disgrace. You're sinking this club because of your own agenda. Useless. That is all Havertz's fault. Gives the ball away. Rashford scores on the counter-attack. We're 1-0 down. I'm done. He's pointing at his head with, that is all your fault.
Guess who give the ball away?
What a fucking pass.
Fucking Havertz,
That's what we were waiting for.
Now, that's unusual, isn't it? It's unusual for two reasons. One, this is an Arsenal player wearing the Arsenal shirt. He's only just joined us. Surely we owe him a little bit more support than that. But the other reason I find it really surprising is because, well, he's not entirely to blame. It's not entirely his fault. Yes, he gives the ball away in the top third of the pitch. But I want to just say, and this isn't me trying to throw Ben White under a bus. I'm a huge fan of Ben White's. I'm sure we all are. But he makes a really unusual run to get back. He doesn't go to Rashford, even though Saliba's back there. He goes pretty much towards Saliba, and by the time Rashford goes into the box, they're both in the same sort of position, trying to force him to shoot wide, which Rashford does. Now, the other question here is, could Ramsdale have done better? I'm prepared to say, look, he got a hand to it. It was unsavable. It was a great shot. It's what Rashford does. And he was quiet throughout the match, but this moment, well, it just reminded us all so much of last season, didn't it? Where he did the same thing. Of course, last season, Bukayo Saka decided to equalise with an equally brilliant bit of skill. And when Man United went a goal up, having had no chances, I wasn't as worried. Of course, there is another 2/3 of the game left to go. But for us to equalise in the way we did, Martin Odegaard, it was one of the few times in the game when we attacked them with one-touch passing. And Nketiah passes to Martinelli. Martinelli finds Odegaard in open space, and his finish is so sweet. And so the joy. So Onana goes from being wildly celebratory and acting like he's won the World Cup to having to calm everyone down in like a minute. It was brilliant. Now, the rest of the first half was largely uneventful, but I do want to go back to one thing, because if I had a criticism of the referee in the first half, it was the fact that he didn't seem to want to pull out a yellow card for what we've all been told is now a bookable offence, and that is time wasting. When Anthony is fouled and claims he didn't hear the whistle, he kicks the ball away. And the referee buys his excuse that he didn't hear the whistle. But I have a question, because I know he was kicking the ball away deliberately. And the question I would have is, if he didn't hear the whistle, you're asking me to believe that Anthony, as bad as he was at large parts of yesterday, just kicked the ball into our half where there was not a single Man United player, just because he was going to do that anyway. So that was about the only real issue when it came to the refereeing in the first half. But that certainly changed in the second half. I did feel that with the game as it was, with us being increasingly funneled out wide as Man United congested the middle of the pitch, and with us taking too many touches, not looking quite fluent enough, trying to break down a team that had come just to get a draw, it seemed, or to snatch a late winner with a break, I felt like we would probably see Arteta make changes at half-time, but that didn't happen. When they came out for the second half, Havertz was still there. Now, look, I get it. You probably don't want to take Havertz off and compound the young man's misery, but his head had well and truly dropped by then. And I would, just as an aside, I would say I wonder how much his performance was down to the abuse he's getting from his own fans. Is he wondering why the hell he came to us? I'm not saying that I think he's going to be a great player. I'm just saying I don't know yet. But anyway, the first real incident of note in the second half almost felt redemptive. Kai Havertz picked up the ball, ran into the area, 2 players descend on him, he goes down, the referee hesitates for seconds, if that, before giving a penalty, and justice was done. Kai Havertz had won a penalty, we were going to go 2-1 up, and before I can even start worrying over whether Saka might miss one or not, VAR got involved. Recommended that the referee took a look at it, he took a look at it, and to be honest, having seen it dozens of times now, it's clear that there really isn't enough contact on Kai Havertz. I do think his left foot gets clipped, but, you know, essentially, if that had been a penalty given against one of our defenders, I would have been livid about it. And so there was still 30-something minutes at least of the game left. And I thought, okay, fine, don't give this penalty. It would have been a really soft penalty. But a penalty not being given kind of summed up Kai Havertz's day. I will say I don't necessarily think he was that much worse on the day than Saliba, than Zinchenko. But, well, when your luck's not in, and that's how it kind of ended for Kai Havertz. So where do we go from here with Kai Havertz? Is Arteta stubborn and sticking with him because he won't accept that he was wrong to sign him? I know I wasn't keen on us signing Kai Havertz. He hasn't looked good for 3 years, but I'm not seeing him in training. What surprises me is everyone's made their mind up about him already. I will admit that this was not one of his best games. But like I said, I don't think he was the only player that didn't play particularly well. So the game carried on pretty much as it had been. But by the 68th minute, the referee finally took action and booked Onana for time wasting. Now, all of the time that Man United wasted was added on at the end. So it wasn't like they really got a material advantage for it. And it made the extra time winner and the follow-up goal even sweeter for knowing that they weren't able to benefit from just knocking the ball about between them and taking as long as possible to do everything. But when you think that Tomiyasu got a booking for holding onto the ball 8 seconds for a throw-in, it's amazing there are any Man United players left on that pitch. I've never seen a Man United team play the ball between themselves at the back quite like this. In fact, I think for the first 20 minutes, they didn't even have a pass in our half. The game, I think 40% of the game was played in the final third. This was not a Man United any of us recognise. Really not sure how their fans are going to feel if it carries on like this, but any chance that they might have thought they had going into the season to win the league already seems to have dissolved, even though it's only 4 games in. Just before Onana's booked, Rasmus Højlund comes on for the totally inconspicuous Anthony Martial. He made 11 passes in the game. I think he had something like 17 touches all round. It just wasn't working for him. And we all got a chance to see the £72 million sensation who's been injured up until now. And I will say, when he came on, he looked physical, he looked determined, he looked scrappy. By the 75th minute, which was much later than I thought it would be, Arteta makes the substitutions. And Kai Havertz finally makes way for Fabio Vieira. And for me, and there is something weird about that, isn't it? I mean, if one player was really getting on everybody's nerves last year, it was Fabio. Of course, he was a game changer against Fulham. And it was strange to think how many people were really pleased to see him coming on. Eddie came off and Jesus came on, and Tomiyasu replaced Zinchenko, who I thought had done really well to make it that far into the game. And I had renewed optimism. I think we all did, because it really felt like we could take the game by the scruff of the neck. Also, worth mentioning that Martinez had gone off with an injury. And so when you looked at their back four at that point with Lindelof, Dalot and Wan-Bissaka, who never plays well against us, but did okay yesterday, I really thought that they were there for the taking. That, coupled with the fact that they really hadn't had much in the way of threat at our end either. Ramsdale with hardly anything to do all game. Then pressing them on the left-hand side of their defence, Fernandes boots the ball away. Martinelli drives inside, plays the ball to Jesus. He sets up Odegaard. Odegaard fires it towards Saka, and Saka kicks it straight at Onana. I mean, it was he probably wasn't expecting to get a shot, but this was weak. And, you know, so far as I know, no one's giving Saka tons of abuse. I appreciate that he's our star boy and he does amazing things. But I do just want to say, I think there are games where it's okay to sub Saka. In the 83rd minute, Antony makes way for Garnacho. Now, I am no fan of Antony's, but I will give him credit in this game for tracking back. There is a moment, actually, after Rashford's goal where, well, have a look at this. Does this look like somebody who's thrilled that his teammate has just scored a goal? There's something not quite right in the mood of the Man United camp. I am doing a video about Man United in the coming days, so I won't go into too much detail now. But when Antony makes way for Garnacho, I wasn't particularly worried, but it was clear that they might now have a threat that Antony just hadn't been able to provide. We got a corner, and all game, something that had been noticeable. Earlier in the first half, Declan Rice had a header from a Saka corner that he jumped a little bit late, or it was a little bit high for him, and it went over. But it was really clear all the way through the game, in the first half particularly, that Man United had very much decided to leave him unmarked at the far post. And I think at half-time, the Arsenal coaches recognised this. So for the second half, what we started to see in corners was blocking players. So we will get to this in a moment, because you all know how the game ends, and we all know that Declan Rice scored his first ever Arsenal goal. We'll talk about exactly how that happens. But before that happens, there was a real moment where it felt like, despite the injustice of it, Manchester United were going to take all 3 points. This is probably the most controversial part of the game so far. Never mind the 2 penalties that weren't given. After what looked like a foul, Man United win possession. Arsenal are up the field, pushing forward and exposed at the back. And the ball is released to Garnacho, who runs on free, scores past Ramsdale in the bottom right-hand corner. And it was a sickener. After having so much of the game, after so little threat from Man United, such a walking performance, it looked like they'd taken all 3 points for the first time in 6 years from a visit to the Emirates. Now, I will say that when they scored it, I was gutted. But I did feel that maybe he was offside. That was my only hope. And he was. But was he? Ten Hag afterwards said that the lines had been drawn in the wrong place. Now, for me, that just seemed really salty. My first impression was, well, how can the lines be in the wrong place? This is technology. Technology doesn't lie, does it? I have to say that there are a couple of things here. One, Gabriel, who, realising, looking across the line and seeing that he might play Garnacho on, jumps back so that his head is forward. And it's his head which is the last part of him. But when the lines are drawn in the VAR room, it turns out that Garnacho is millimetres offside. So all of the pandemonium in the away end, the celebrating that they've got the 3 points, is brought to a shuddering halt as the goal is ruled off. I loved it. Absolutely brilliant. But it'd be wrong not to comment on this, because it is controversial. I don't know, and I'd love to hear from you. My opinion has been that VAR is about cameras triangulating the position of the players, measuring where they are, so that when you draw a line, you know definitively whether the player is on or offside. I will say that in the days before VAR, this goal would have stood. No question whatsoever. No linesman is giving offside here. It's such a fractional decision that only technology could have spotted it. And if the technology is drawn by a human being in the VAR room, well, I need someone to explain it to me. Is it where you draw the line? Can a human being influence whether something looks on or offside or not? I would love to know. In any case, the goal didn't stand. And, well, as we all know, Declan Rice in the 97th minute, after 8 minutes of injury time are called, in the 97th minute. Well, look, just before that, Odegaard has a shot, which doesn't seem to come off anyone. Looked like he just skied it. But then a corner is given. I don't know if it is a corner. It looks to me like the ball leaves his foot and carries on a normal trajectory over the bar. But that corner in the 97th minute has you all remembering Bournemouth, doesn't it? Now, as I said earlier, it was really obvious that Man United had decided not to mark Declan Rice. But in the second half, Arsenal had adopted a practice of putting two blockers in front of him. In this case, it was Gabriel and Tomiyasu, and Johnny Evans and Gabriel tussle. Johnny Evans stays on his feet, Gabriel goes to the floor, but Declan Rice finds himself in acres of space, and with calmness, a moment of pure quality. He leathers it, it takes a deflection, goes in past the diving Onana, and the whole place goes up. Unbelievable scenes. Declan Rice runs into the crowd. At one point, you're worried they're going to tear him apart in the jubilation. But he stands there and takes in the applause and the love of his new team. Kai Havertz must be watching that thinking, why can't that be me? And maybe it will be. Maybe it yet will be. But that was the justice. Man United had come in a way that no Man United team ever does to shut up shop and keep us out, frustrate us and rope-a-dope. Nick the points if they could. And when they thought they had done, before they'd even had a chance to process that, they realised it was all over. And just for that little cherry on the icing on the cake, Jesus is put through by Vieira. Right at the 101st minute, he runs towards Dalot, cuts inside, leaves Dalot on his arse and fires a goal and fires a ball into the bottom right-hand corner past Onana. 3-1 to the Arsenal. Massive jubilation everywhere. A real feel-good moment. Now, hopefully, this result can get the fan base excited again. It is going to be a really big ask of any team to beat Man City. I think they look slightly weaker than last season, but even a weaker Manchester City takes some beating. Ten Hag afterwards said he was really happy with the performance, which can only add fuel to the fire. He said that Rasmus Højlund should have had a penalty, which would have been a really soft penalty, softer even than Kai Havertz's penalty. He felt that the lines had been drawn wrong for the offside, and he felt that Johnny Evans had been tackled in the box, none of which can be supported by watching the video footage over and over again. It did come across just a little bit like a very sore loser not admitting defeat. Those fans who, the fan earlier who was calling for Mikel Arteta's head, surely an apology is due. But in any case, Arsenal 3, Manchester United 1. And it isn't just that we win. It's that we win with this level of excitement. You don't get this if you're a City fan. All the Spurs fans singing, we've got our Tottenham back. They don't get this. I can't wait for them to come to the Emirates. But in any case, Kai Havertz, let me know how you feel. Do we drop him now? Do we give up on it? Has he had enough of a chance? 4 games after all. Is he the next Willian who Arteta will stubbornly stick with? Is Arteta tinkering too much? I love to hear what you think about all these questions. So leave comments below. And until I see you again, be lucky. Lots of love.